Good afternoon and welcome back to United MUFON. I'm so glad you could join me today. You know, we're getting closer to Christmas now and we're in the official countdown. Only 8 days left at this point. Yikes. Time flies. But I hope you're getting all your shopping done and enjoying this amazing season of peace, love, joy, and family. Lots of family. It's amazing. And cold. Did I mention that it's really been cold here in Tennessee? I think we're going to have a white Christmas this year, and I hope it's a lot warmer where you are, but you know, at your house, I hope it's warm. I'm kind of a wimp when it comes to the freezing cold weather, so you know, you'll hear me complain a lot throughout the entire winter season. But anyway, we have a lot to talk about today, and I'm excited as MUFON is once again evolving. Our Observer Network is now up and running, and we are so proud of the new features that we'll be adding to it as we share this stream with you all. To experience Mona, go to MUFONOBM.net and click on the link to find out more and sign up. It's free to all our MUFON members. Just use your login membership credentials. We are adding apps to it as we move forward, and we're very excited about what is in the future of the MONA or MUFON Observer Network app. This is really going to be an amazing app which will link you to other places within MUFON, even here to United MUFON. So for several years, MUFON has been developing a social network specifically designated for UFO enthusiasts. We call it the MUFON Observer Network, or OBN for short. And when our app is perfected, the app name, again, will be MONA, the acronym for MUFON Observer Network Application. Think of the OBN website and application as kind of a Facebook for members of our MUFON UFO community. We made this conscious decision to keep it at an integral network for MUFON. Internal network for MUFON. Thus, this is a new membership perk for you guys. However, we are advertising this here in the month of December for the first time for those UFO enthusiasts who may have always desired to join MUFON, but previously waffled, asking, you know, what does MUFON offer me if I'm a member? Well, we offer a lot, actually, and when you join MUFON, even at our basic membership level of $5.89 per month, or $59.88 per the year, you get online access to our beautifully designed monthly magazine, the MUFON Journal, with in-depth articles. And you also get membership level access to our 125,000 UFO case files and associated photos, drawings, and videos submitted by witnesses. For a higher level membership, you can also get MUFON TV with hundreds of original programs and a membership card. And you can even upload photos, videos, and links to any one of your specific preferences. The Observer Network also offers amazing free MUFON TV content for you without even logging in. So there is something now for the non-member also. Check it out. And now, even at the basic membership, like I had said, you get access to a growing private social network of people who have interests just like you. As a MUFON member, you would use your membership credentials, like I said, to log into the OBM. Once logged in, this network allows you to tell your story, your own story, join a group, create a group, and most importantly, upload your personal experience or evidence when you've had any type of an experience for your peers to analyze and even debate and give you comments about, communicate with you and with other members. I hope you really will check this out. You know, before we get started, there are some sad news that I do have to share with people here, unfortunately. MUFON has lost a couple amazing people. Tom Woods, I would like to mention this. It's with great regret that I share the news that we've lost a MUFON CFI and supporter and friend in Minnesota, Tom Woods. Tom has always been a respected, hardworking member and friend filled with passion and dedication to ufology on many levels. And he's always had a twinkle in his eye and a smile on his face for us all. He worked with MUFON, StarWorks, and also Minnesota Public Access Television. And Tom will be sorely missed by all of us here at MUFON. I just want to say thank you, Tom, out there. You know all the answers now. Thank you for your amazing spirit and service. And our hearts go out to Tom's family and friends there in Minnesota and around the world. And also, A.J. Givard of Brazil. You may have seen things posted on Facebook or Twitter and all over the social media. He was the National Director Emeritus with MUFON for many decades. And, we keep losing these amazing people. It's heartbreaking. But, please take a moment and remember them and their families during this holiday season. I didn't want to go, without mentioning all this. But so now, today, I have an exciting day planned for us with our special guest, Bob Spearing, and his presentation for us on patterns, which are about recurring UFO patterns and reports. You'll be amazed, actually, at how many patterns there are out there. And hey, this is what we do. So we'll get into that a little bit later. I know you'll enjoy every minute of it. But I do want to mention that in the month of January, I will not have a United MUFON meeting on the fourth weekend as usual. I will be in Washington next month, so we'll skip the month of January, and I will be back on track in February with Stacy Wright. She's our state director for Arizona, and she'll be discussing the MUFON boot camp. She does one every year, and it's always an amazing time and a huge success for field investigators. Not to mention, you make lifelong friends at the boot camp and have a unique experience in the Arizona desert, honing your investigative skills. Stacy is such a hardworking, dedicated, excellent certified FI with MUFON and is well qualified to present the MUFON boot camp. If you haven't attended one, put that on your list. You'll be glad you did. And it might even be something that you might want to purchase for a ufologist within MUFON to take that course. That'd be a great Christmas present this year. Then in March, we'll have Jeremy Ray with us, and that is going to be a delightful interview as well, as he's been on the Hangar 1 Files, which I'm sure you all remember quite well, the TV show, and we look forward to hearing about all that and what he's doing today with Colorado MUFON. So stay tuned to United MUFON for a new year of interesting interviews and information. I'll update you as we get more people on our agenda. And you might be asking, so why do I have a United MUFON meeting each month online when there's meetings all over? Well, if you've never heard about MUFON or who we are or what we do, I want to educate and encourage you to check us out. We are dealing with one of the greatest subjects on the planet, extraterrestrial life. Literally off-world life and what's happening in our skies. This is an important subject for all of us. So without further ado, what do we do here at MUFON, you might be wondering? Well, what is MUFON? We're the Mutual UFO Network. And who we are? We're the largest and oldest UFO investigative organization in the world, with a huge member base adding to it daily, represented in all 50 states and 40 countries, with thousands of trained, volunteer, certified field investigators, and over 50 PhD consultants in most disciplines. MUFON does conduct scientific investigations of the UFO phenomenon, while others are just UFO reporting agencies. And we were established in 1969, and for the past 53 years, MUFON has compiled a database of over 5,000 UFO reports. Our CMS, known to us here as the Case Management System, was developed in 2006. And as MUFON has evolved, we now monitor abductions as well as entity cases. So how do we investigate, you might be wondering? Well, we use computer sciences, biology, astronomy, physics, chemistry, geology, engineering, and statistics. And that's our scientific method. And I do have some stats I can share with you right now that we can talk about, because we keep track of all these stats to see what's going on, what's happening in our world. And the number of reports that came into the United States alone was 544 cases this last November, last month. And the 7 states that had the highest ranking of number of reports were California, that had 47, and they're always a number 1 or a number 2 spot. Texas had 40. Florida, always high numbers, 36 cases. Pennsylvania had 35. Michigan had 30. Missouri had 26. And New York had 24. And that's just the 7. Now, if you want to check out the rest of our stats, you can go to MUFON.com and check those stats out. The shapes of the objects that we've had, the number of reports, the circle was our top noted, 126 cases reported with the circle. The sphere had 76. The triangle had 60. Our unknowns were 53, and we had ovals were 41, and discs were 36. So that's just a little bit about what we've got, to show you in the statistics of what's going on around the United States. And the distance from the witnesses, under 100 feet, there were 78 reports of under 100 feet. And 101 to 500 feet, there were 77 reports. 501 feet to 1 mile, 130 reports. And over 1 mile, 163 reports. But the most impressive that we have, there were 21 landings reported, hoverings and takeoffs, and 20 entities that had been seen that came in through either the ERT or just our regular stats. So this is just in November. So look at all that we are doing. We are the boots on the ground. We're the ones that go out and do the investigations on all of these. This is who we are here at MUFON. And we have a mission statement. And these are the words that inspire us each and every day. Investigate UFO sightings, abductions, and entity cases. We promote research of UFOs with an eye always towards science. And we educate the public on the UFO phenomenon, which is pretty much what we're doing today. We do have a board of directors. Our executive director is David McDonald. Myself is the director of memberships, Barbara Schuessler-Sobani, Debbie Ziegelmeyer, Rob Swiatek, Richard Beckwith, and Sandy Clevin. We're here to serve you all. Now, we're talking about all these UFO stats and reports, but what about all of those reports that we get? Of all of them, our UFO reports that are received are approximately maybe 15% actual. The rest can be misidentifications, optical illusions, stars, planets, hoaxes, and sometimes even hallucinations. But what about the remaining 15%? That's actually what brought me personally to MUFON, and that's the reason for MUFON's existence. The strangest things can happen when you see something or when you experience something. And you're not alone. That's why we're here. We want to hear your story. So go to MUFON and upload, report your experience to MUFON.com, and someone will get in touch with you to do an investigation for you. We also have an experiencers resource team. It's called the ERT, and they're dedicated to helping experiencers of alien contact. Currently, our director is Dr. George Medich. And if you've got something that you want to share, please know that we keep everything confidential for you. And you can just go to MUFON.com/experiencer-questionnaire.html and upload, and we will get with you. Absolutely. Now, a little bit of MUFON business before we get to our information today. We have the Cincinnati 2023 MUFON Symposium coming up. And we'll start putting up a little bit more information come February as to speakers and all the pertinent information that you'll need for a hotel. But that's August 24th through the 27th. So please save that date. That's our Cincinnati MUFON Symposium. And you can go to MUFONsymposium.com to see what we've already got uploaded at this point. I hope you can make it. I know I'll be there. Now, we are doing a MUFON journal call for submissions. So if there's something that you would like to make known or have in the MUFON journal, please contact our journal editor at MUFON.com, and whatever it is that you've got that you would like to share, we're interested in hearing about it. So reach out to Barbara Sobani, and she's our journal editor, and we'll hook all your information up, and we look forward to you submitting to us. Thank you so much. Now, we've got the official MUFON podcast that is our weekly and monthly event. Don't forget to watch that with Richard Beckwith. He has a wonderful updated format and interesting subject matter every single month, interviews and latest UFO information each month. So go to MUFON.com and join on to the podcast. And we've also got MUFON What's Up. So please join that as well. And they're very popular. So you're never at a loss for all things UFO and off-world related information when you're with MUFON. Now, if you haven't joined MUFON as of yet, as the Director of Memberships, I would like to invite you to do so. Join MUFON today. We have our MUFON members will receive electronic or hard copy monthly journals, whichever you desire to purchase. And we've got articles by leading ufologists, UFO sighting reports, abduction cases, mutilations, crop circles, information about our symposiums, one-on-one interviews, book reports, so much information, as well as a director's message from Dave McDonald every month. So I hope it's only $59.88 for the whole year at the basic level, and you can always upgrade. So you can just log on to MUFON.com and join. We have many different options for you. And if you'd like to upgrade your MUFON membership to include MUFON TV, which is amazing, it's only $119.88 for the whole year, or $9.99 a month. That's like getting a coffee, so it's really well worth it, and it's got so much information. And the beauty of that MUFON TV is that includes our live stream to the MUFON symposiums. So if you can't make those, at least you get all that information, and it's so cost effective for you. So I hope you'll join on. Now, if you'd like to become a field investigator and join our team, become a MUFON member first, and then you can become a field investigator by taking a test. We do certify you, and it's really just an honor to work in this field in ufology. We are a 501c3 volunteer organization, and we would love to have you join us. We are definitely in need of field investigators, so please join on if you're interested in this subject. It's my passion, and many of us here, we are totally dedicated to seeing what is happening in our skies above, and being a field investigator, you'll never be the same, trust me. Now, available at our MUFON store, we've got our I Know tees, and these things are just great. They come in black, and they also come in white. We've also got at our online store so many different things. You can get all kinds of apparel and even toys. We've got coffee cups, bags, you name it. Everything you can think of, all emblazoned with the MUFON logo. So please visit our online store. We appreciate that. Thank you. Now, we are live, like I said, every fourth Saturday of the month, almost. This month, because we're in December and it's Christmas, we've had to go to the third week. So I will change that around the holidays, but as a rule, it's always going to be the first Saturday of the month. And like I previously mentioned, we will not have a meeting next month because I will be in Washington. So we will go right into February and March and April and so on. So please join us next February instead of January, okay? I look forward to seeing you there. I hope you can make it. And now, our today's presentation and topic is going to be Bob Spearing. And let me just read a little bit about Bob, give you a little bit of bio on him. Bob graduated from Fordham University with a BA in Communications with Journalism and Film Production as major concentrations. Bob recently retired from the Port Authority of New York and AMP, New Jersey, after 34 years. His many duties included being an FRA licensed rail traffic controller and locomotive engineer. While in management, he was a safety investigator, contract administrator, prepared multi-million-dollar budgets, managed public relations, and curated historical railroad exhibitions at a major regional transportation hub. Bob joined MUFON in 2014 as a field investigator and is currently the Director of International Investigations. Bob has long been involved with MUFON's various special projects, including the Mars Historical Reports Archiving Project and the Pine Bush, New York UFO Museum and the MUFON Observer Network. He has had numerous articles published in the various UFO-related magazines around the world, including 3 MUFON journal cover stories, and he's also appeared at the Travel Channel television series, UFOs, The Lost Evidence, as a photo analyst. He also writes articles for the MUFON newsletter and MUFON.com and speaks at area conventions. Bob lives in eastern Pennsylvania, Pocono Mountains, with his wife and twin boys. So please join me in welcoming Bob Spearing. Hi, Bob.
How are you?
I'm
nice to
good.
See you.
Welcome to United MUFON. I'm so interested in hearing what you're sharing with us today, patterns. This is really neat. I'm looking forward to this.
So yeah, my background in ufology began when I had my own sighting in 1981 of orbs, and I didn't know what they were. It was over a remote lake while I was camping late at night during a rainstorm in New Jersey, and I saw this object hovering over the lake and then began making bizarre maneuvers and shot off. And I didn't know what it was. And then in 2013, I came across a book by Terry Ray, who was a Pennsylvania field investigator for MUFON, about the history of orange orbs. And I went, oh my goodness, other people have seen what I've seen. And that's what got me into MUFON. Along the way, I became very interested in orbs, did a lot of research on it. And I also began to investigate patterns in UFO sightings. And I've developed a slide presentation on PowerPoint where I take you into various types of patterns that I've discovered over the years. Some of these patterns take place over decades. Some take place over an enormous amount of history. Orbs, for example, for thousands of years, people have seen orbs in the sky. Famous people have seen orbs. Orbs exhibit behaviors in some cases, which I will go into here. They exhibit violent behaviors. So there's a whole bunch of things I'd like to get into now, if you'd like to see my slide presentation.
Absolutely. Please share that with us. This really sounds very interesting. I've seen orbs, and so I'm very aware of them, very many different sizes, even some as big as, the UFO that I saw, 42 feet orbs. So this is interesting for me.
Okay, let me share my screen here.
Okay.
Go. Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
Go. Here we go. Share. Okay, can you see it?
I can see it.
Okay, let's begin.
All righty.
Um, there we go. Okay, the first section I'm going to talk about are symbols, craft shapes, and mass schoolyard encounters. Back in the 1960s, a very famous incident happened in Madrid, Spain, that later became known as the UMO files. Several very famous photographs were taken by a person who claimed to be a contactee with an alien spaceship. Dr. Alan Hynek classified it as a hoax, but when they did trace evidence at the scene of where this person saw these UFOs, they found polyvinyl fluoride tubes, which had been developed by DuPont. The trace evidence problem there was that in 1966, polyvinyl fluoride was only in the realm of the military. This led to the sighting becoming more legitimate. The photograph that I'm about to show you is a very, very famous photograph, and it's an oval with what looks like an H with a line through it. And what I want you to take notice of here is the symbol, the three lines that are going horizontal and one going uh, basically vertical or the opposite way
Right.
around.
Uh-huh.
This very, very famous UFO photograph. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is because there are other drawings that people have made that show similar symbols to this on the craft.
Oh, interesting.
This is the actual newspaper account from Madrid from this 1966 occurrence, and there's also a diagram of what people believe they saw. Now, if you go to the Lani Zamora incident in April of 1964 in Socorro, the egg-shaped object that he saw, people have. If you look at the right, this is what has been publicized over the years. It's like a red semicircle with an arrow in it. That's not the actual symbol that Lonnie Zamora saw. And Ben Moss, who is a former field investigator and current member of MUFON,
Right.
actually sat with Ray Stanford, who investigated this in depth. And the drawing on the left is actually what Lonnie Zamora saw as a symbol on the side of the egg. And while it's not exact, you get the three horizontal lines like you saw in the UMO file. Now, what's interesting is that same day as the Lani Zamora sighting in New Mexico, there was one in Newark Valley, New York at 10 a.m., several hours before Lani's account.
Oh.
And basically, it was a person who witnessed an egg shaped object. He met two small humanoids in silver suits. They were carrying trays of dirt, and they used telepathy to say, "Don't be afraid. We have talked to humans before." I don't go into it in this slide presentation itself, but I actually wrote an article a year or two ago for a British magazine. The amount of times human beings have come in contact with entities that say to them, "Don't be afraid, we won't hurt you. Don't
Right.
be afraid," over and over.
Right.
It is an astonishing pattern. And
Yes.
usually they say, "Do not be afraid,"
Right.
rather than "don't be afraid," because if they were saying "don't be afraid," they're using English contractions. So
Right.
you would take that as suspect, but they speak in very proper English usually. "Do not be afraid," as if they were learning, English through a Babel type program on their planet, let's say. Okay,
Right.
so
Interesting.
they leave. They were interested in his tractor and his manure. He goes back and leaves a bag of manure after they're gone. The next day he comes back and the bag of manure is gone. I just thought that was a very interesting side story to that whole incident. No logo or symbol was seen on this egg, unlike Lonnie Zamora's egg the same day. But in 1965, a year later, another egg, all right, is seen in a field in France. And in this case, the little humanoids were taking samples again. They point an object toward him, uh, but they did not harm him. Like the Lani Zamora episode, landing gear impressions were found in the soil. So what we have here are several incidences of eggs a year apart. In one case, the same day as another one. Symbols that look very, very similar to each other. Little humanoids that seem to be taking soil and dirt samples. So we have three recurring patterns right now at this point.
Mm-hmm.
This is a drawing from the French sighting in 1965 of what the gentleman saw. Balanced, very famous sighting. Now, here's where I'm going to tie it all together. In Russia in 1989, some boys were playing football in a park. They saw a pink glow in the sky, much the same as my object when I saw the pink ball in the sky. And then a spaceship comes down and they see a three-eyed alien wearing bronze-colored boots with a disc on its chest.
Hmm.
Discs on alien chests is another pattern that I don't
Right.
have time to go
Mm-hmm.
into.
Mm-hmm.
They see a robot exiting the object. The alien uses a ray gun to make a 16-year-old boy disappear until the object departed. And there were 10 to 12 witnesses in this 1989 case in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
There it is. So these are some of the children. This is one drawing of what they saw. But I'm going to show you some similarities to something else, and I'm going to go into a few other schoolyard mass encounters, which is another pattern. They asked the children in Russia to draw what they saw, and I want to bring your attention to two parts of these drawings. In the upper right-hand corner, I want you to look at the disc with the glass cupola and the round portholes on the side. And I want you to hold that thought. But now look down to the left lower corner. This is the same symbol that was on the Humo craft in Madrid, Spain in 1966. So that ties in a 1966 Madrid, Spain sighting with a 1989 Russia sighting with the same symbol as the Madrid sighting, similar to the Lani Zamora sighting. Do we have the same type of craft? Is it the same type of visitors that have been coming over a period of decades around the world?
Right. Mm-hmm.
The drawing in the upper right-hand corner of the disc with the cupola and the portholes shows up in other schoolyard encounters. Now I'm going to show you one right now from the Westall, Australia, April 6, 1966 case where it was a mass sighting. The craft, several craft actually, turned slightly purple, and they were about twice the size of a family car. This is what the objects look like that the children and the teachers saw in 1966.
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
But now when you go to Zimbabwe,
Mm-hmm.
1994, you have a little man, shiny suit, all right? And look at his 110 witnesses, including teachers and children.
Mm-hmm.
This is very similar to what we saw in the other case. A cupola, this is similar to the one drawing that the kid in Russia saw in 1989. You have the cupola, and you have the disc, and you have the round portholes.
Right.
Now, last year, our case of the year at our symposium was done by Oklahoma State Director Mindy Toutfest.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a previously unknown encounter where children at a missionary school in Oklahoma observed an object come down and observed them for a period of time. They discovered later that a freezer full of food that they had out in the backyard, the food had disappeared. The next day, the food was back. The father ended up making them burn the meat because he didn't know what the story was.
Right.
But yeah, I would burn it
I
too.
would too.
But what's interesting is the drawing that the children made.
Look at
If you
that.
look at the right, it's got the disc with the
Same thing.
cupola and the portholes on the side. Are we looking at the same disc over and over in other mass schoolyard encounters? And if so, why do these particular type of objects have an interest in school children?
Yeah.
It's all very creepy, to be
Like
perfectly
a
honest.
like some type of a species that is, you
And
know,
they have an interest in
right. The
human
younger
children.
the
Yeah.
younger children. Uh-huh.
Okay.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. See, let's compare it. They're up in the upper right hand corner.
Absolutely.
Okay. Violent orbs. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about. This is the book that got me started when I had my sighting in 1981. And then I read this book and I said, my goodness, other people have seen these same objects that I saw. This is what got me interested in investigating orbs. Now, many of us are familiar with the Tutmos III, Pharaoh of Egypt, and the Tuli Papyrus, which tells the story of objects like orbs coming in the sky
Right.
over a period of days.
Uh-huh.
And at one point, stuff begins falling out of the sky, water and fish, almost as if like someone was flushing a toilet bowl on the Egyptians. Now, the Toli Papyrus was named after a fellow who worked for the Vatican Museum. And when he died, the papyrus was lost. His family and the Vatican don't know if it ever existed or what happened to it. So there's been some doubt about whether or not it was authentic or not. But what makes this story more legitimate is that Tutmos III, who was a very, very accomplished military leader, he won 45 military encounters in all over the course of his lifetime, and he won them all. But one in particular stands out, and we do have the physical evidence of the narrative to this day, unlike the Toli Papyrus, which was lost. It is on the Gebel Barkal Stela, and it tells the story of the miracle of the star. And the miracle of the star is this. Tutmos had a high priest who went against him, and it caused a civil war. So the high priest forces were coming from the south. They come to meet Tutmos and his army on the battlefield, and the miracle of the star happens. This stone inscription here tells the story of a very bright white orb coming down and violently eliminating the high priest's army, utterly decimates the high priest's army on the battleground without touching Tutmos's army. The coincidence factor here would be amazing. One, what are the chances of a meteorite coming down just as a battle begins? What are the chances of a meteorite coming down and just annihilating one side in the battle? This almost seems as if forces that we don't know who they are were helping Tutmos III.
That's right.
In which case, this would be an incidence of some sort of outside interference interfering with human beings' timeline. Our
Yeah, and
historical
interstellar interference.
is somebody trying to alter the course of history to make sure that Tutmos wins and the high priest doesn't, to establish the continuation of Egypt or wherever this is going.
Right.
That would just be one example, but I have more.
Yeah. This is interesting. I like this.
The Romans, when they were expanding in 73 BC, made it to Turkey, okay, which was called the, I have to go to the next slide to remember. Let's see. Okay. The Romans were fighting the Turks, all right,
Okay.
the Parthians. And the Pontian Empire is right here, which is now Turkey. The Turks were slaughtering the Romans, event after battle after battle. They meet on the battlefield again one day, and a giant white object comes down and stops right between the two armies. Both armies flee because they don't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
After that, the tide of the battle changes, and after the Romans regroup, they utterly crush the Pontians, take control of Turkey, and eventually work their way down into Israel. And that's how the Romans made it into Israel. And the rest we know from the Christian New
Right.
Testament what
Uh-huh.
happens there.
Mm-hmm.
Was there manipulation by this object that came down that helped turn the course of the battle to the Romans, that eventually led to the Romans coming down and conquering Israel?
Mm-hmm.
Again, was there manipulation of our timeline by some sort of white meteorite that meets two armies on a battlefield?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost beyond coincidence.
Right, like some type of interjection there to control the outcome.
Right. This is a
Wow.
tile,
Mm-hmm.
yep, of the actual battle.
Yeah, that is
Okay.
something. Mm-hmm.
Now, the orbs didn't give up. In the 1100s, all right, Robert Bruce of Scotland, Robert the Bruce,
Uh-huh.
was fighting for uh, the freedom of Scotland. And they have one battle where the British are holed up on an island in a fortress, and Robert the Bruce sends a spy across the water to this island. And he tells the spy, when the British least think we're going to be coming, we want you to wave a torch, and that's our signal to attack. So a couple of hours later, Robert Bruce sees this enormous bright red light, takes it as the cue to attack, and his army gets decimated by the British. The
Oh.
spy is brought to him, and he says, listen, I'm going to have you executed for betraying us. Why did you do this to us? And the spy says, my lord, I never made it across the river. I did not flash that sign. It became so famous, this episode in Scottish history, that a very, very long poem was written about it. And if the viewer has been reading it, you will see that at the time of this battle, a very large, bright red light overshadowed the water to the point that uh, the cocks thought it was morning because this took place at night.
Oh.
And
Hmm.
was it an orb? What brought about this disaster for the Scottish, if not more interference by some sort of orb or meteorite that hovered? There's
Right.
actually something going on here, okay,
Mm-hmm.
over a
Mm-hmm.
period of time.
Mm-hmm.
In 1694, uh, there were orbs that were seen to come out of the water in Wales, and they set barns on fire, hay on fire. People were uh, people were injured. Okay, so the question here is: was it some sort of natural phenomenon like ball lightning, or was there a definite malevolence to these objects that were seen to come out of the water, glowing like orbs that began burning down stuff in this little town?
Yeah, like USOs back in the day. Yeah.
Now, we're all familiar with the Dyatlov Pass incident, where this skiing troupe in Russia,
Oh, right.
in the Ural Mountains in 1959, a month before I was born, they're found wiped out after a search party goes to look for them. Some of them are in their underwear. Some of
Yes.
them are,
Bizarre.
their tongue has been ripped out,
Yeah.
their eyes ripped out, and nobody could figure out what happened to these people. Eventually, it was claimed it was an avalanche. Okay, but if you look at the tent,
Mm-hmm.
behind the tent, you see a cross. All right, it was actually one of their tools that they had. This is after the avalanche. That same cross is standing in a photograph they took before the avalanche. So if an entire troop of people, some found a mile away, all right, were
Mm-hmm.
wiped out by an avalanche that was less than 2 feet tall, there's a problem with that story. But that's the
Right.
official account from Russia.
Right.
Now, the reason I bring this up is because the fellow here on the left in the lower section, Zolotaryov. He was taking photographs of something that night. He was found frozen to death behind his camera. So, what would compel a man, knowing he was going to die,
Yeah.
to still stay at his camera,
Right.
take a picture of something that he felt was important for us to know?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to show you the picture next. This is the last photograph on his film roll. What is it that he was taking a picture of? Is it some sort of orb? This was the last thing this fellow saw before he died.
You know, that is such an interesting case. It's just absolutely all encompassing to me because, you know, some people have said that it could have been a Yeti, it could have been some type of cryptoid, it could have been an orb, you know, extraterrestrial. It's very interesting. But what would rip your tongue out?
Right.
What would rip your tongue out? You
Some
know?
people thought there was one theory that there was a spy in the group, an American spy, and it was a missile launch that night, and maybe the
Right.
KGB wiped out the people. They also were contaminated with radiation,
Right.
and where did the radiation come from?
Right.
The more you go down that rabbit hole, the more you will never come out.
Yeah.
Because there's no way you're ever going to figure out what happened to those people.
No, gosh. Oh my goodness. What a great story that is, too.
Here's another good one. This was investigated by Dr. Hynek and Jacques Vallée, who went to Ethiopia, Saladare, Ethiopia, to investigate something that happened on August 7th, 1970. This is an actual picture from the village where it happened. Apparently, in the daytime, a bright red orb came down the middle of the street, the main street of the village. It tore up the ground behind it. The facades of the buildings on the main street collapsed into the street. A little girl was killed. Now, you could conceivably say perhaps it was some sort of natural event, a ball lightning of some sort. But there was evidence that whatever this thing was, it was sentient, because when it reached the end of the main street, it turned around and came back down the main street and did more damage. The possibility of coincidence that it was some sort of natural phenomenon, that it just made a U-turn and came back down through the village to do some more damage, would be quite a coincidence.
Yeah.
Vallée and Hynek both classified this as a CE4, as an unknown, and I agree with them totally. This is a very, very interesting case.
That is very interesting. I might add that I had an experience back in the 70s that called me from my sleep, actually, and I went outside and there was a massive, massive orange orb at the end of our street on 23rd Avenue and 32nd Street, and I watched it, and then I went back in the house like nothing had happened. But it woke me up, called me. I saw it. I have it on terryling.com. But this is so interesting because these big orbs are definite. Something is going on here, and we do need to find this out. You know, we do need to get to some type of understanding. And I'm so proud of what you're doing. Gosh, this is amazing, Bob.
Thank you. I believe that the orb phenomenon is actually 3 or 4 different phenomena.
And it could be,
I believe some of it might be natural, like ball lightning that
like
people
the
are
lightning.
seeing. I also believe that it's some sort of sentient
Yes.
plasma ball
Right.
that is capable of making decisions. That could be some sort of probe. A lot of them are seen in conjunction with fireworks. They're drawn to fireworks as if there's something about the fireworks. What could that be? Fireworks are mildly radioactive. They have strontium-80 in them, all right, that helps create the glow. If these things were possibly extraterrestrial probes, are they looking for evidence of radioactivity by humans, the same way they check out military bases with missiles to see what we're doing? Then the third thing is, I believe some of these orbs that people see are actual craft
Yes, absolutely.
Enveloped in a
Yes.
plasma ball.
Yes.
And one logical reason for that would be that plasma absorbs radar. So if, for example, the United States right now is experimenting with shooting plasma fields in front of their F-22 Raptors and F-35 fighter jets,
Right.
because a ground radar, say in Iran, if Iran was going to be attacked by us, they shoot out their radar looking for our planes. When their radar hits the plasma field, it makes our planes behind it look invisible, like there's
Right.
nothing there.
Right.
So that's the third possibility I believe orbs are. There's some sort of radar evading craft wrapped in a plasma envelope.
Well, if
Okay.
you'd have ever seen my other experience from 1979, the craft that was hovered over the railroad track, when it flipped, it shot up and it stopped about 500 feet in the sky. And when it did, this huge fireball exited from the bottom of that craft. And, it was so shocking. It was beyond, you couldn't even wrap your mind around it in 1979 because, I was way too young, 27 years old, never seen anything like that before. But why did that happen? So this is really interesting. This is a great area that you're into here.
Well, Terry, I'll tell you this. I'm aware of so many patterns from my research that for an object to suddenly turn vertical, go up, stop, is an often recurring pattern. And another pattern is that these objects are often seen shooting orbs out of them.
Right.
So you in 1979, you encountered two patterns in one sighting that
Right.
are predominant in ufology.
Right. Exactly. Hard to wrap your mind around, let me tell you. Even today, it's just amazing to have seen and experienced that. Go on.
Okay. Paint changing color. Two of my favorite cases that I've ever come across. I wrote an article on this 2 years ago for Shadows of Your Mind magazine. Basically, I first came across this in Flying Saucer magazine. Okay, this is the actual cover, and this is the actual story. And basically, a gentleman was going from Oslo at the top of the screen along Highway E18. And when he was passing this lake here on the right, he had a UFO encounter where he said a spacecraft came down, blocked his way, all right, went around and blocked his way. And he began to experience, him and his passenger, eye irritation, and he didn't feel well. He was getting heart palpitations. And I will tell you exactly what that all means in a minute. This is what the sky looked like that night. I think it was 1957 when this took place. I don't know if it was cloudy, but there was enough ambient light that this person in the car on that highway that I would have been able to see something. It wouldn't have been pitch black. Okay, and here is exactly where he was. And this is a picture from the 1950s of that same highway. So picture this man late at night, has an encounter with a UFO, irritates his eyes, gives him and his passenger heart palpitations. Okay, let's go back there. He gets home. His wife comes out to greet him, and she says, "Oh, you got a new car." And he says, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "The car's green." He looks, and he notices that his beige car has turned green. The paint has turned green.
Wow.
The next day, the paint reverts back to its natural beige. Okay, now I'm going to keep going because I have another case just like this, and then I'll explain it all. What happened to this car and what happened to this man and his passenger?
Yeah, what's the science there?
I've got the science for you. Second case. This was a case I did in New Jersey when I was in MUFON in New Jersey. A woman, this was in the 70s, a woman was traveling from New Jersey to Salem, Massachusetts, about 3 a.m. near Niptuck Forest on the Connecticut-Massachusetts border, near the area in the Berkshires where the famous 1966 covered bridge orb case took place with the Wood family. She has several missing hours. She claimed that she saw bright lights, yellow, green, and red lights behind her, right behind her dashboard window. She felt compelled to exit off onto this road in the middle of nowhere. The next morning, she wakes up in her car in front of the hotel that she was trying to get to. Her engine is fried. The paint on her car has changed colors. And
Wow.
the question I ask everybody is this. This is the 1970s. There were no cell phones.
Right.
If her car had broken down, the engine, how did she make it right to the hotel before
Right.
the engine and everything
Yeah.
fried?
Yeah.
Who, you can't
How'd that
call on a
happen?
cell phone at 3 o'clock in the morning in the 1970s for the
No.
police to get there. And why wouldn't they take her to the repair shop instead of dropping the car? So she has no idea how she got there, all right, except that the car had to get junked and the paint had changed color. Kevin Randall wrote to me after this article and he said, I've got two more accounts for you. And Kevin Randall sent me two accounts of paint changing color in two other cases. All right.
Amazing.
So how do you put this is where Rosa was on the Connecticut Massachusetts border.
Sheesh.
This was the hotel she was actually trying to get to.
Oh my goodness.
Now, here's where it gets interesting.
The
We
science.
know that UFOs give off electromagnetic fields.
Yes, they do.
We know that diesel engines and car engines work differently. When the fellow in Sweden in Norway in the 1950s, his car engine didn't die. Rose's got fried. Okay, so the first thing is when a UFO gives off an electromagnetic field, if it's powerful enough, it can irritate someone's eyes and it can give people heart palpitations, like what happened to the fellow in Norway. Paint primer, the undercoat of paint on cars, is made with titanium oxide, which is magnetic. So if the car paint was exposed to a strong enough electromagnetic field,
Right.
it would temporarily change the color of the paint at a molecular level till the magnetic field dissipated, and then the paint would go back
Go
to its
back.
original color.
There you go.
Okay? Why didn't the gentleman in Norway's engine fry? Well, that's because he had a diesel engine. Okay?
Oh.
Diesel engines are never affected by electromagnetic fields.
Right.
Regular gasoline engines are, like Rose's. Okay?
Right.
And now we don't see cases of electromagnetic interference anymore in cars. Why would that be? Well, it's because the insulation of the wiring in modern cars is so much more superior than it was in the 50s and 70s that you don't get many UFO related electromagnetic interference cases with cars anymore. Okay? So if a field is strong enough, it can change the paint color. Most electromagnetic interference cases were just strong enough to dim somebody's headlights, kill somebody's engines. If the field is strong enough, it will change the paint color and it will give people heart palpitations. So we can explain this case perfectly that these witnesses came in contact with some sort of UFOs giving off very strong electromagnetic fields.
That's amazing. That's amazing to know.
Okay, historical persons, and you have to let me know if we're running out of time, okay? Because I
We're
could
good.
go on all day.
We're good.
Okay. All right. People we've already encountered already with orbs were Tutmos III, Pharaoh of Egypt, 3,500 years ago, and Robert the Bruce, a little less than 1,000 years ago. We still have St. Francis, Joseph Smith of the Mormons, Johann van Goethe, who wrote Faust, Mary Jones, President Teddy Roosevelt, and Stuart Whitman. St. Francis of Assisi, the Catholic saint, was seen by his prior in a monastery one morning out in a garden. And St. Francis was talking to a ball of light just over his head. And he was obviously communicating with the ball of light because the prior heard him say to the ball of light, "But why me, O Lord? I'm just a worm." Okay?
Right.
So we can ascertain from this that
It's a spiritual thing. Yeah.
there was a two-way conversation
Yeah.
going between St. Francis and whatever he was talking to. But the prior could not hear what the orb was saying to St.
Right.
Francis. So
Right.
we have a very personal experience here
Mm-hmm.
with a man who, in one way, helped change history, at least from a Christian perspective. All
Right.
right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Joseph Smith of the Mormons, who, by the way, was assassinated, um, he had set up camp in New Jersey. This is before they ever made it out to Utah. And in 1845, if you go down to the middle of this excerpt from a book about the Mormons, where it begins on Saturday evening, or rather early Sunday, another phenomenon made its appearance in the sky. If possible, there was another thing that they talk about earlier. A globe of fire, apparently the dimensions of a good sized balloon, was observed to move about from position to position, making its appearance now in one place, now in another. It might be seen at one moment blazing with all the crimson luster of the sun, like the Robert Bruce encounter, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
800 years before. Sometimes stationary, all of a sudden it would shift position, locate at a spot considerable distance, stay for a few minutes, and then migrate back to its original place. All right?
Mm-hmm.
This is an example. This is seen by a very famous person, leader of the Mormons, and this orb exhibits a lot of the behaviors that we see in a lot of more recent newspaper accounts about orbs. Orbs can split into many. They can
Yes.
merge into one.
Right.
They can be here, disappear, suddenly be here, suddenly
Right.
go back to the place where they were. And that's what's being described here. Classic attributes of orbs as we see them today.
Mm-hmm. That is amazing.
Goethe wrote Faust, and if anybody's familiar with Faust, it's about a man who sells his soul to the devil.
Yeah.
In 1958, the movie Damn Yankees is based on Faust, which is an account of a character who sells his soul to Satan so that the Yankees can win the World Series.
Oh dear.
Okay? Excellent movie, very funny.
I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah, Damn Yankees. But Faust was a scientist as well as a writer, and he was very, very into the ocular sciences. He was into analyzing color. All right, he used prisms to analyze the rainbow. But when this fellow was on a stagecoach caught up at night in a very, very severe rainstorm, the road became muddy and they all had to get out and push the carriage up the hill. And he writes off to the right side of the ravine, I saw a sort of amphitheater, wonderfully illuminated. In a funnel shaped space, there were innumerable little lights shining, range step, fashion over one another, and they shone so brilliantly that the eye was dazzled. But the sight was even more confusing because these objects did not keep still, but jumped about here and there as well as downwards from above, as if they were animated, luminous creatures. So here we have a very famous scientist and author, all right, in the 1800s, saying that he saw a phenomenon, possibly natural, like ball lightning, but in his mind, in his scientific mind, he felt that they were sentient and that
Right.
they were doing what they were doing with a purpose.
Okay.
Okay, and I
Yeah.
find that very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
In 1905, in Wales, Mary Jones was an itinerant preacher during a Christian revival in the UK at the time. And she would speak at this church in Egrin, Wales.
Mm-hmm.
And for the entire summer, whenever she would go to the church to preach, orbs would come and hover over the church. And when she would depart the church and get in her carriage to go home, the orbs would follow her home. And when she'd
Oh
make a
my
left on the
goodness.
road, the
Mm-hmm.
orbs would follow her. So
Hmm.
again, we have a Christian perspective, at least in some of these, and again, sentience, where these objects, whatever they were clearly interested in Mary Jones. At the end of the summer, it all ceased and never happened again. And the revival, by the way, died at that point, which I found very interesting.
That is. It's like to everything there is a time and a purpose under heaven.
That's right. And if you go on the
Yeah.
internet and look up Mary Jones, Egrin, Wales,
I'm
1905,
going to.
you will find lots and lots of people who have investigated this. This is a drawing, an illustration from an actual magazine describing the scene that would occur over Mary Jones' church when she would preach.
That is amazing.
Now, there's another interesting one. 2 years later, in Oyster Bay, New York, President Teddy Roosevelt was at his summer White House in Oyster Bay, and a white, low altitude orb was seen over his mansion for a long time that night. I wrote to the Teddy Roosevelt Historical Society that had his diaries. He was home that night. He would have absolutely seen this light, but he makes no mention of it in his diary. That's the first peculiar thing that happened that night. What was that light over Sagamore, his mansion?
Yeah.
A few miles away at the public library, Teddy Roosevelt had donated a chair that he used when he was governor of New York. Okay? That same night, the chair split wide open. Okay?
Wow.
And this is a picture of the chair. And you can see that it shows the 13 American colonies and the American
Right.
eagle on top.
Uh-huh.
They repaired the chair. The chair is still in the library today. Nothing else has ever happened to it. But the same night that Teddy saw that the orb was over Teddy's mansion, this chair split in half. And if you look at, you see the American colony emblem is split in half.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder if it's an omen about how polarized the United States is today.
Oh,
All right.
very interesting observation there.
But another very interesting observation is that the week that this happened, there was a major peace conference in Europe. And the United States announced, and this was always Teddy Roosevelt's dream, that the United States would create a modern navy. And we ended up having the first modern navy in the world at this peace conference. The same week, this chair was split open, and the orb was over Teddy Roosevelt's mansion. Is there any connection to the orb, the splitting of the chair, and the fact that America created the first modern navy in the world, all in that same week?
That is very interesting. Yeah. Good heavens.
Look, can I keep going?
Yeah, you can keep going.
Okay. Now, the November 9th, 1965 blackout. I was 6 years old. I remember that blackout, okay? Because my father had to take my baptism candles and use them to light the house, okay? The next day, my uncle, my father's brother, came over, and he was all excited. He says, they saw UFOs over the power station right before the blackout. And as it turned out, when I grew up and I researched this, the Clay Power Station at Niagara Falls was where everything tripped. That blacked out from Quebec down to Virginia.
Oh my
One
heavens.
pilot was flying right over the Clay Power Station when it blew, and he saw a strange red fireball type object. All in all, there were 7 reports from that area that night of fireballs.
Were they flying over, or something that came from that explosion?
This is before the explosion.
Okay,
So
okay.
something alien to the explosion was over. 7 reports in all, including one from this pilot. It could not have been something astronomical because it was below the plane.
Right,
Okay,
got it.
what he was seeing.
Okay.
All right. Now, do you remember Stuart Whitman, the actor from TV in the 1960s? He was on
face is familiar.
Gunsmoke.
Yeah.
Very famous TV actor. Okay. He was in a hotel room that night in Manhattan. Okay, when all of the lights went out. And this is his story. He saw 2 orbs, one blue and another orange, outside his hotel window, which was on the 12th floor. And they talked to him as if they were talking through a loudspeaker or a megaphone. And this is what he says. Then I heard them speaking to me as if they were on a loudspeaker. They spoke to me in English. They said they wanted to talk to me because I appeared to have no malice or hate in my soul. They said they were fearful of Earth because Earthlings were messing around with unknown quantities and might disrupt the balance of the universe on their planet. Now,
Wow.
this is classic contactee stuff.
It
They're giving
is.
him that message.
Right.
Okay, you're destroying the universe. You're destroying Earth. You've got to stop. All right. But what he says next very much reminds me of the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still. They said to him, the blackout was just a little demonstration of their power, and that they could do a lot more with almost no effort.
Yeah.
It served as a warning. So, you know, a contactee is one thing.
Right.
And a lot of times the message they get, sometimes some of it makes sense. Sometimes there's a moral component to it, like stop using nuclear,
Right.
bombs.
Yeah.
And sometimes there almost seems to be a logic to it, especially when it's associated with an event like a massive blackout along the entire East Coast.
That
Did
is
Stuart
something.
Whitman get a message from orbs that had blacked out the entire eastern seaboard?
Do
All
you
right.
know if he was a ufologist or if he was somebody
No,
that?
he
Oh,
wasn't.
okay.
He
Okay.
wasn't into it.
All right.
As a matter of fact,
So
I
he
don't know
was
if it
just
says
a
it.
person standing there that
Just a-
happened to be a famous person. Yeah.
That's right. All right.
Okay.
So now let's get away from orbs and go to
Okay. Oh, darn.
transparent globe UFOs. This was a
Okay.
phenomenon that strictly took place in the 20th century. It began in Crimea in 1931. A fellow reported seeing a transparent globe over his house. The witness was about 130 feet from the object, which he described as 7 feet in diameter, no visible means of propulsion. Inside, he saw a wrinkly faced man with a red beard, long red hair, in red clothing.
Huh.
The globe then floats away. Now, what's interesting here is he says there was no means of propulsion. What I'm going to show you over the next several reports is other transparent globes with possibly the same man decades later. Other people dressed in red, no visible means of propulsion. So you have to ask the question as you look at these reports I'm going to show you. Where did it come from if it had no
Right.
visible means of propulsion? In some cases, they were standing inside this globe, or there was just a
Right.
chair. So where was their refrigerator? Where was their bed? Where was their oxygen systems? The impression I get is that it was either time travelers and they just popped in for a visit, or they were interdimensional and came from right next door to us because we can't see that dimension.
Right.
Because they obviously did not come from Alpha Centauri,
Yeah.
4.3 light years
Right.
away, without any visible means of propulsion. All right. So this is 1931. Old man, long red hair, red clothing. 1951, 20 years later. This is what somebody drew. This is actual witness photograph. 3 witnesses at a concert. They just happened to see a transparent globe near them due to the fact they hear a whistling sound. The pilot was in a light-colored one-piece suit. He appeared meager and old, of normal skin color, and had long and probably white beard. Very similar to the guy 20 years later, 20 years earlier in Crimea. Had he grown older? Is this still his same model glass transparent orb that he's in?
Or is it another one?
Or is it right? And now it begins to progress. 1968, Medulla, Florida. We get 2 people here in this drawing, transparent globe, and it seems like if you've ever seen those rail cars where the 2 guys are pumping down the tracks, that's what it looks like these guys are doing. Again, this looks like 18th century technology that they're using to operate these glass globes.
Right. Well, and of course, I don't know if you know about my experience in Florida, but I was taken from the house in a transparent globe. And I was just speaking to Ians about that at the Edgar Cayce Foundation, and it was so powerful. And I remember saying, to myself, what am I standing on? How am I not going back and forth and rocking this way and that way? And my hair should be G-force to the back of this globe But it was just like you see it right now. It wasn't even moving, and I thought, this, I cannot wrap my mind around. I don't understand how this is happening, but I was in the pure, clear globe. And
Did you see any entity?
I saw this huge white being behind me glowing, but every time I would turn like this, he would go farther. I was not allowed to see him, but he spoke in a male voice and very kind until it was time to come back, because I didn't want to come back, and he forced me to come back. And it's a really long, involved, experience that I had, powerful, because it was literally out of body. And so
Right.
These things are just, it's mind-boggling how interesting this is, these things that can happen to us here.
And it's interesting because it doesn't seem like they're all one type of entity or
Right, they're
spacecraft.
very different.
It's like
yes.
very, very different.
Very
Glass globes,
different
orbs,
species coming
discs,
from somewhere else. Yeah.
triangles. Right.
Right.
All right. So this is the Florida case.
Yes.
Now, in Belgium in 1974, we get this guy. Another
Oh,
case
wow.
of someone this guy is actually like in his underwear, and he's described as naked, sitting on a chair with no other means of propulsion.
Yeah, there's a note. I was naked in mine, actually.
Were you? Okay.
Yes, I was.
Inside was a naked giant on a couch with no visible method of steering in front of him. He was estimated to be 9 feet tall. Similar to, you said your entity was tall?
Yes.
Tall and glowing? Okay. All right. This one had a ring of multicolored lights on it. So now we come to the classic case from, well, one more. This is Brazil, 1963, a globe
at
with 4
that.
entities, no height given by the witness. They're seen wearing diver suits. Another pattern, by the way, lots of diver suit UFO occupants. And they also wear black boots. Remember the black boots? Gran Canary Island, the first of 2 cases. A teenager and her aunt were walking in a wooded area. They come upon a transparent globe, which they describe as a soap bubble. Inside, an occupant is wearing red, or completely red from top to bottom. They're about 6.5 feet tall. The sphere is 17 feet in diameter. All right, a light sound was heard. The 2 ladies ran to the house again, and a beam of light comes out of the glass globe and is able to penetrate through the walls of the house.
Right.
I have 3 accounts of beams penetrating right through a house. Do you know that the United States government right now is working on that technology?
I sure do. And,
Okay.
yeah, and I know they've got it.
Now, this is the classic case. Tenerife. We're all familiar with this case. Hundreds of people on all of the Canary Islands, especially in Tenerife, see these lights in the sky. There's a very famous photo I'll show you next, all right? A Spanish military vessel actually records it in their logs, what was going on. There are air traffic control reports from airplanes, but there's also a fellow by the name of Dr. Francisco Pardon Leon, who was going to a house call in a taxi when he comes face to face with one of these transparent globes. Inside, he saw 8 to 10 foot tall entities completely dressed in red. What is it with red?
The red, yeah.
In all of these glass transparent
Must be a
globes?
specific species.
This is the ship, all right? This is the famous photograph from Tenerife that night.
It's amazing.
And this is, I'm just going to go right to it. This is what the doctor saw. 2 people, again, facing each other, almost like the 2 guys in a rail car.
Right.
All right? Big glass bubble, only this bubble had the ability to expand and contract. This was right in front of them. There's no doubt in my mind that all of these cases are related. And the kicker here is that these guys were dressed in red.
That is amazing. Yeah.
This is the last one I was able to find. This is courtesy of Albert Rosales, who wrote the Humanoid book series, who's a really, really interesting guy. Several police officers see this object with the human figures inside. They actually called the Cobra Terror Task Force to help. 2 service dogs refused to enter the area.
Really?
Okay? And it left trace evidence of scorched leaves on bushes.
Oh my
All right.
heavens.
And that's the last glass globe case I can find.
That is so amazing.
How are we doing for time?
Well, we're getting there. We're at an hour and a half, so we are probably at our time limit today. But
okay,
did you
I
have
can
just a
finish right
few?
here.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I can finish right here. I got the point across.
It's
that
so
what we're
interesting.
seeing are patterns. Yes. Let me take this down. Let me end screen share if I can figure out how to do it. And I probably won't be able to.
52. That was a good year.
52. Yeah.
That's when they
that
were
was-
over our White House as well in 52.
Well, yeah. Let me tell you about 1952 real
Okay,
quickly,
okay.
and we'll end there.
Okay.
In 1952, there were dozens and dozens and dozens of runway incursions
Yes.
by UFOs that landed or came and hovered over runways. This is what's really interesting. In 90% of the cases, they were SAC bases, Strategic Air Command, all right? And in 50% of the cases, these objects went to bases that General Eisenhower
Right.
either was going to go to or had been.
Yeah.
All right. And the two interesting connections there is that in 1952, two very interesting things happened. In July, when these peaked, these runway incursions, the United States perfected the hydrogen bomb.
Right. Yeah.
And in November of 1952, President Eisenhower was elected president.
Right.
So all these runway incursions have to do with two things: General Eisenhower and nuclear bombs.
I know. Isn't that amazing? It's, yeah. So much to find out still. So much to know and understand.
So
I love it. I love it.
I found the button to stop sharing. There you go. All right, we're back. We're back.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, this has really been interesting, from talking about the schoolyard patterns with all these children, and oh my heavens, there's so many of them. It is not a coincidence, okay?
No.
Something is happening, most definitely. And they are interested in the children, and I really kind of think it is like different species have different subject material that they're learning about or they're investigating themselves. And so we see all these different crafts which are similar along with what they're doing. That's a similarity pattern right there, you know. And it's amazing. And violent orbs, and I'm well versed on orbs. I've had those happen to me in my own personal experiences, and mind-boggling. It's hard to understand exactly what they are. I do know they're intelligently controlled. You know, this isn't just, you know, a happenstance thing. They're intelligent. They woke me up, called me out, that kind of thing, you know. So, and then the mysterious lights, you know, all these different lights, and blue, orange, white. I've heard different colors, different intensities, different sizes. In Florida, the CI, David Toon was talking about some of these orbs, and he said some of them are, you know, like the size of the state of Texas. And I'm like, what? You know, and NASA technosignatures have proven that. So that's why I tell people to please watch David Toon's presentation on the NASA technosignatures. I don't know if you've seen that yet or not,
No.
but it is amazing and changes your entire perspective on what it is you are looking at and how much bigger than us this is. Their technology is advanced, and it's just literally mind-boggling. So there's so much to learn, so much to know, so much to investigate still. I just absolutely love this. Thank you so much, Bob,
Thank you.
for
Thank you.
sharing that. That was excellent information. And really, I hadn't talked about this in a very long time, so really interesting. So, but we are running out of time. I do want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to say Merry Christmas to all of you people. We only have 8 days left until Christmas. And please join us next month. In February. I won't be here next month. But in February, we'll have Stacy Wright talking about the boot camp and that is in Arizona. So let me just say goodbye, Bob, and thank you so much again. It's been wonderful. Look forward
Thank
to
you,
talking
Terry.
to you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, have a good night,
You too. Bye bye.
and Merry Christmas, everybody.